Hello everyone, I am Sebastian Cater. I'm the Head of UK Theatre and Workforce Development, and I'm very pleased to welcome you to this webinar and to introduce our presenter today, Dawn Farrow. I would like to welcome you all, and just to be sure that this is the right webinar that you have planned to come on, this is called Planning for Change, Essential Skills for a Financially Robust and Happy Future, presented by Dawn Farrow, as I mentioned. Just a few housekeeping messages before we start. The webinar should last for around 60 minutes, and anyone attending, we won't be able to see you or hear you, but you can ask questions typing into the Q&A box, which is at the bottom of your screen. So if you just hover over the bottom of your screen, you'll see the Q&A box there. So just type in anything that comes to mind. The team may be able to answer it during the session. If not, we'll have a chance to ask questions at the end. There's an option to ask questions anonymously. If you wish, that option is there in the box when you're putting the question in. We're recording the webinar as well. We'll circulate it to everyone who joined us afterwards, and also we'll archive the recording on our theatremeansbusiness.info website. We also have the SOLT UK Theatre team on hand to handle any technical issues. Just to briefly give you a bit of context to what we're doing here, obviously we're in strange and very challenging times during lockdown. SOLT and UK Theatre wanted to find new ways to support the sector during this period. Traditionally, we run training courses, events and conferences in real life, but obviously these can't happen at the minute. So we created theatremeansbusiness.info, which is probably how you've come to us, and you'll have seen that there's a range of learning and information webinars to equip the theatre sector with the tools it needs to rebuild itself. Just briefly, what we're hoping you'll take away from this webinar today. As I mentioned, we are in this strange state of flux, and in spite of that, it is still possible for us to take control of long-term change. And Dawn's presentation is going to outline some ways in which we can take back control, if I can still use that phrase, and also looking at why taking hard decisions will reap rewards in the long run. Just a brief message about SOLT and UK Theatre, if you're not aware. We're presenting these webinars in partnership with Dawn. Membership of SOLT and UK Theatre enables us to support your needs and those of the sector. There's a range of initiatives we've done recently, particularly lobbying local and national governments to enable COVID-19 funds to be available. We're also able to create initiatives like theatremeansbusiness.info. So if you're already a member of SOLT and UK Theatre, thank you so much for your continued support. And to find out more about membership, visit uktheatre.org. That's enough from me. We are very grateful today to welcome Dawn Farrow to join us, and Dawn has made some time to join us today. Over to you, Dawn.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Sebastian. Now, if I can just... Are we over to, hi everybody, hello. Okay, so thank you for that lovely introduction, Sebastian. We're going to talk about financially robust and happy futures. First thing I would like you to do is think about being happy. You've all joined today, which is fantastic, and I'm very grateful to you. We're going to talk about positivity, we're going to talk about change, we're going to talk about how difficult change can be. I'm going to give you some really amazing top tips. The first thing I'm going to do, for the sake of a little bit of happiness, is share my new little friend with you. This is Isla, and she's the thing at the moment, one of the things that's making me very happy, though not, I must admit, financially robust. So let's get going. You're perhaps wondering, or it's useful to check in and ask yourself, is this webinar for me? Am I in the right place? Is this what I want to be talking about this afternoon? Is this what I want to be learning about? Well, to answer that, I would say if you've spent the last 6 or 7 weeks feeling a little bit like this, perhaps your way of dealing with change and dealing with such massive changes in the world and everything around you has been quite a zen. You've perhaps internalized, you've perhaps been very calm in your thinking. Perhaps for some people you felt or had moments of feeling really strong actually thinking, oh, I can conquer this no matter what happens, it won't get me. But perhaps also you've had moments of literal screaming, actually feeling really angry with what's happening in the world and what's happening with our industry. Perhaps you've also had moments of feeling a bit like a superhero. I know I've had moments where I thought I could absolutely create change in a moment. But actually, on a very personal note, I've had moments of feeling all of these things. What I've actually had very few moments of feeling is pure joy. The sort of joy that I get, and I imagine everybody who's joined us today gets from actually seeing live experiences, the joy that actually I'm missing. And part of today is giving you the tools and the power to get back to feeling like that when we don't get our live experiences at the moment. So what can you expect today? Well, let's start with what you're not going to get. This is not management school. I could teach you a lot about different formal management models, but I'm not going to. We're not going to talk about the 7 R's. We're not going to talk about 10 or 13 principles. I don't really have too much interest in talking to you about Kotner's change management model either, actually. It doesn't feel relevant to us right now, here today. What we are going to talk about are 3 really simple stages, things that you can actually make happen. I'm going to give you a summary with some really straightforward and actionable takeaways that you can do on your own, or you could do by reaching out to somebody else and sharing this presentation with them. I'm going to give you some personal experience, having been through some massive change earlier this year. And I'm going to be really honest with you, and I'm ready to be really positive, everybody. I think the fact that you are here today means that you probably feeling like you're ready to feel positive as well. So let's change the title of our presentation today. Let's talk about it being a time for the leopard to change its spots. And because I'm from a marketing background, let's call this the Farrow change management model, FCMM. Part 1, the leopard. Change programs are most successful when, as a result of external factors, there's a shared sense of urgency to deliver tangible change. External factors, you say? Yeah, okay, well, yep, a global pandemic, that would do it. That would really resonate with that sentiment. But it feels so big and it feels so scary and everything feels out of my control right now. Maybe actually on a very personal level, personal to us all, maybe we're not worried about the pandemic as such. Maybe we're actually really worried about our own future. Maybe we're also thinking about change because of the value we want to gain from feeling a little more equipped and a little more on the front foot. Maybe we're seeking change for personal and/or professional ambition. Change doesn't have to be just for your organization. It could be a moment when personal ambition means that you have to take different professional steps. And maybe the reason for thinking about strategic change is for well-being. Maybe because of recent events, you realize that you need to make change or take steps towards change for your own health and well-being. And these are all shared understandings. I think most people joining us today these sentiments will resonate with you all. I think it's worth then thinking about why we as a human race and why you as an individual might be avoiding change. Some people don't like conflict. In honesty with you, change very often means facing some really difficult conversations, and that can mean conflict, though if dealt with properly isn't actually conflict. You're gonna have to make some really difficult decisions. You know it, maybe you're putting them off, but nevertheless, some difficult decisions that may, for you, if you're leading a company, mean redundancies. That may mean for you as an individual thinking about leaving an industry that you love just because you need to pay the rent. You might be avoiding change because of actual fear of failure. You might just be thinking, regardless of what's happening in the world, I don't know, I'm just that big ambition I've got. I'm just, what if I couldn't achieve it? I'm just going to put it off. And that also talks to the fear of the unknown. Some people like staying in the safe lane, and I think that is absolutely valid. But actually, when real change is needed, that won't work. You avoid change because you're not ready to get out of the comfort zone. You avoid change because maybe you've been around it in the past, in a team, in a business, in a large organization, and it's always handled really badly. And so therefore you walk away from any need to make change. Maybe you just prefer to watch others. Maybe you don't see yourself as a leader of change and you wait for others to tell you what to do, or to see what they do and simply replicate what they do. But maybe you're a leader, and maybe you've decided that change is something that can be delegated. Maybe you lead a marketing team and you decide, well, really change is about the finance team should lead on that, because isn't change all about finance? And maybe you actually just don't know where to start. You have an idea of where you might want to get to, but you don't know. Now, Miriam's going to ask you all to vote. I'm hoping that will come up on your screen if you would like to vote now. How many of these apply to you? A couple? More than I anticipated, or yeah, most of them. Pass the wine and the chocolate. Please feel free to vote now. Just give you a few moments to do that. Everybody voted? Okay, now, great, thank you everybody. Okay, so just over 40, but actually that's really fascinating. So just over 40% of you said more than you anticipated. Interestingly, nearly 40% said just a couple. So interestingly, the answer with regards to most of them was about 20%. It's fairly even questions, fairly even answers in many ways. I have to say that I probably sit in the middle box as well, but it's interesting to see the spread of answers. Thank you. Then now, let me just carry on here, beg your pardon. So, now let's talk about knowing what you control, because I think that's a really important place to start together. So knowing what you control is how well you prepare. You've got this. This is absolutely all in your control. Preparation is key. How much time you're prepared to exert. Time is something that I think we've all been talking a lot about. Sometimes we feel at the moment we have a lot of time. Other times we're stretched between family and childcare, caring for others, for parents, for the elderly, trying to do your bit volunteering, then trying to log on and do some work. But how much time you're prepared to give to change in order to meet an ambition really needs a lot of thinking about. You also control how you interpret a situation or conversation. I think at the moment, on a personal note, I love being in a room with people. I love being able to read body language and understand the response and how people are responding to me. So I find it much more difficult on a Zoom call or even just a normal call to understand what that person really means. And sometimes I've read it really wrongly and I felt actually a little sensitive that I haven't had the response I needed. You control whether you listen or talk, and in developing a change management strategy, that's really important because there are going to be times when you absolutely have to talk, and there are times when you really, really have to listen. So start to think about, are you a good talker or a good listener? You can control whether you think positively or negatively. And right now, some of us have had days that feel endlessly negative because your job is a concern, because you don't know how you're going to pay for things. It all feels extraordinarily big and scary and negative. But all I can say to you is that you control how you can begin to feel positive and thinking about how to plan for that positivity. You know what you control in terms of how many new things you can try, how innovative you are in your thinking. And innovation is inspiration. It can build positivity. Innovation may not come just from our industry. Where else could you find knowledge and growth to create innovation? And you also control how quickly you get up after you get knocked down. And that seems to apply to our whole industry at the moment, but it also applies to us individually because we have all been knocked for 6. Some of us knocked for 7, 8, 9, 10. But if you really think about it, I'm sure you've been knocked before and you've got back up and you've found the tools to work towards the next step. And you will again, and this time you're going to think really strategically about your ambition and your dreams and how quickly you can then get up next time. And you also control how good you are to yourself, because that's really important. You're here, you've joined on this brilliant conversation that we're having today. So you've already been good to yourself. You're already in the room, leaning in, ready to learn. And all of these things are all about managing the fear that we all are holding, though our fears I take on board, maybe all slightly different, but we'd be surprised how much they cross over together. So if we could run the same poll, I'm going to ask the same questions. If you would all like to vote. And that comes up on your screen, please. So how many applied to you? A couple, more than you anticipated. Most of them, please pass the wine and the chocolate. How many do you actually realise you control? Okay. Right. Everybody's voted. Let's get the answers on that, if we may. Great. Yeah, more than you anticipate. I think that's absolutely valid. Brilliant. Thank you, everybody, for your honesty. So, part 1, the leopard. Okay, so we have spoken a Rye. She needs to change her spots. He or she needs to change her spots. And we've acknowledged that, you know, that's a shared understanding right now. A global pandemic, sure, but why are you seeking change? We've started to look at why we avoid change, human nature, but really being clear about why we as individuals avoid change, and we all have a different number to pick from that list. And then we've also acknowledged what we control day to day, even before we start writing down plans, what we control. So, part 2. At this stage, 2 things will happen. Some of you will feel strong, you will feel empowered, you will feel, oh, I'm ready to write this plan, let me at it. And some of you might be feeling a bit more like the little kitten there, just a little bit hesitant, a little bit worried. Whew, it all just feels so gigantic, and perhaps you just don't know where to start. And I think some people, some of you might be thinking, am I too late? Surely the fact that I didn't have a plan when this all hit meant that I'm just too late. We're 7 weeks in. I'm totally too late. I must be too late, because look, everyone else has been doing loads of stuff. I've seen things online. Everyone's been creative. Everyone's releasing footage. Everyone has a presence on social media. I've just been so left behind. But you haven't. You are not too late. Everybody deals with these sorts of situations differently. Some people maybe already had, you know, plans and ambitions that they were just using in this situation. But regardless of that, even those people that had a plan, they're rewriting them. No one is further ahead than anybody else. We're all in exactly the same boat, trying to do our best to create a really happy future. So you're not too late, and the fact that you're here learning about it today means that you are one step ahead of many other people. But the work we've got ahead of us is really massive. I mean, actually, it feels quite overwhelming. And you might ask yourself, actually, whoever asked themselves, how do I eat an elephant? But it's such a brilliant way to think about how you might get to the point of change that you want to. So here's the thing, the most wonderful quote. A dream written down becomes a goal. A goal broken down into steps becomes a plan. And a plan backed by action becomes a reality. So maybe just take a minute, maybe just take a moment whilst we're together, just have a think about where do I want to get to? Maybe where do I want to get to in the next 8 weeks, whilst we're in such moments of daily change that is out of our control. But also go back to the point of, where do you want to get to professionally? Where do you want to get your organization to? Like, the business plan that you wrote 5 years ago doesn't need thrown away. You just need to start thinking about how you might need to get there differently. So just go back to that dream, or find the ambition and the goal and start using this plan to still work towards it. And here is what I hope you will find a really actionable checklist. So we're talking about big change, and big change can actually only happen in bite-sized pieces. So in truth, the only way you eat an elephant is in small pieces. So if you want to feel financially robust, if feeling financially robust also gives you a place of happiness and comfort, you will only get there by taking bite-sized pieces. You need to consider the scale of the change that you need to make. So for a business that isn't generating any revenue right now, massive scale of change needed. In fact, massive change, full stop. For you as an individual, you may be working in an industry that you love and you're worried about future job opportunities. So you might be thinking, how do I move on from the industry? How do I use these skills? You may not. You might just be thinking, I think I'm going to have to take a long-term pay cut. What is the implication of that scale of change for you and your family? You need to consult. You need to be open and you need to be prepared to listen. So as you start to develop plans for change, you need to think about who you need to work with in your team to develop that plan. Plan can't be just written in isolation unless it is only about you personally. If it's about a team, if it's about an organization, consultation with one another is key. I've spoken briefly previously about positivity, and whilst negativity can overwhelm us, having a positive attitude can be a really great way of being able to write a plan and write down dreams and write down ambitions. So one idea, and this is something that I do, I'm currently not my partner, my husband is in London and I'm not able to be with him. And one of the ways that we manage feeling positive is by sending one another 3 things to feel positive about every single day. And I can't tell you how much better that makes me feel by way of connection, but also by putting things into perspective. And small wins like sending a great email or getting a response from something that you weren't expecting can really give you the energy to continue writing a change management plan. Innovate. If not now, when? We as an industry have such an opportunity to innovate. I have seen time and time again in the last few weeks the most wonderful content coming out by amazingly creative people. Now is a time to learn from each other, to watch what others are doing and innovate, and not just within our industry, you know, really look wider. If we want to create a future where people want to buy live tickets for live experiences, we have to innovate. Seek out risk. Not everybody will feel comfortable with this, but in order to make real change, there is also real risk. So I visualize risk. So over 8 years ago, I set up what became a very successful marketing agency. I remember going to my boss at the time, and I remember the vision I had in my head was me on the edge of a cliff. And I remember almost physically jumping off this cliff as I left the conversation, having told him I was going to set up my own business. Fast forward 8 years, I took a decision at the beginning of this year to close said very successful marketing agency. And when I sat in my boardroom with 16 people about to make the announcement, I also visualized myself on the edge of a cliff. That was important to me. That's what happens. That's my own way of dealing with change. But you have to take risk. And your risk may not be as gigantic as mine in that scenario, but it will feel gigantic to you. resource. What resource do you need to make change? Resource may, for some of you, be financial, but right now, maybe you're going to have to think differently. Maybe resource is people. Maybe resource is having the right environment to working. Maybe resource is a way of working. But what resources do you need to make the change, the dream, the ambition that you're developing, that you're writing down right now? And how, if it is financial, how can you innovate and use innovation to start thinking about generating that income? And take everybody with you. If you're in an organization or if you're running a team, we've talked about consultation, but change works much harder and much more effectively if people go with you. And if change is for you personally, then how about talking about how you take your family with you? And change does need leaders. Some people have to be brave enough to take the biggest risks. Some people have to be prepared to lead others into situations. And now, and I say now as in maybe a literal now, but also a now as in within these next moments of time whilst we're in lockdown, now is the time to start writing down your plan. Start with the dream, turn it into a goal, and follow the checklist to work out how you get there. So you were a leopard. I'm going to turn you into a panther. Part 3. Now here's the problem. You had a great idea. You thought the ideas were fantastic. You'd seen it and happen in other places. You thought, bang, I've got the idea, gonna make this shizzle happen. Then you go, you present it to your team, you present it to your family, and you were hoping everyone was gonna look at you like the Ginger Tom there, all cozy and warm and like, oh, you're just so clever, Dawn. I've never heard such amazing change ideas. Can't wait to get going. Or I have to say, as has happened to me time and time again, many people will look at you a little more like this. A little bit angry, a little bit scared, a little bit, what? And what do you do? What do you do in that scenario? Because you truly believe that, you know, that the plan you've developed is the plan to follow. And my advice to you is, 1, don't be put off with how people look at you. It's okay. But those people might need a bit more help. We know by nature, none of us are seeking out change, right? Change is not easy. And you have to remember sometimes that a plan that you've been developing for months and months could feel like a surprise to others. Not if you consult, not if you try and talk to people, but sometimes that does happen. And all of this is absolutely a journey. There are 0 quick fixes, I'm afraid, but you probably knew that anyway. You need to think about your long-term vision. And long-term at the moment, weirdly, can feel like the next 8 weeks. Maybe that's as far as long-term can feel for you at the moment with, you know, everything that's happening. But also long-term could feel like the next 5 years. And if that is the case for your business, for your organization, for you, then you need to start developing a plan with small changes over time. And I have to say, true change is really emotional. I mean, it's quite exhausting. Firstly, realizing the need for change can feel like such a whack in the face. But it takes a lot of planning, and going back to my point earlier, often conflict that you were putting off and you don't really want to go through, but you'll make yourself. And that might mean sometimes coming home and needing a really big cry because it was really hard to make that decision and implement that decision, but knowing ultimately it was the right thing to do. And it can also be really emotional, carrying people and taking people with you. And having led a business and having grown a business, I can relate to that sentiment extremely well. But even when you have the best people to work with, it can feel really hard to always lead and always take people in your direction of change. But here's the thing, if you are feeling like that, you're probably making some amazing decisions. You're probably implementing some phenomenal change that will lead you to a really, really happy future. You're going to explore, you're going to search, you're going to innovate. That's going to be happening all of the time. And then you're going to develop and you're going to test. You can't just make change and then bang, overnight expect results. Sometimes the changes will need tweaking. Sometimes one of the great ideas that you had just isn't working out. And you'll have tested it. Maybe you'll have tested it again. And then maybe actually you'll find something else that you need to change. Because real change is about integration. When it becomes a change of behavior, that's when we know that change has really been implemented. And it's constant navigation. So whilst right now we're talking about a global pandemic, don't think that as soon as that one problem has gone away, there won't be another one. There absolutely will. And it may not be as big on a global scale, and it may not feel quite as scary on a global scale. But for you personally, there will be situations outside of your control that will change every single month, 8 weeks, 3 months, I mean, you name it. If you're running a team, one day you'll come in and 2 people will have handed in their notice and you're down to a team of 2 just as you're about to do a major on sale. It happens. But if you're really clear on your vision, your plans, then you will be ready to implement change and take action fast. So let's summarize together. I invited you today to the Farrow change management model. But let's scrap that. It's a rubbish title because I'm going to call this Panther. P, promote the reason for change. Say it loud, say it really flipping clear. Tell your family, tell your team, tell your organization, tell all of the teams within your organization. In your leadership environment, tell the leadership team. Promote it positively, and tell them why, of course, it relates to a global pandemic, but also the other reasons that change is needed. You need to take action. It can't just happen. You need to take action by writing it down, but you then actually need to implement all of those great ideas that you're writing down. And that is a really difficult journey to go on, but you've totally got it. If you've got the vision, you can make and take action. Be nimble. Sometimes you just have to change the actions. You've got to be ready. You've got to be agile. You need to just sort of stay on your toes a little bit. I think particularly at the moment, you'll find that some of the changes you want to make in order to get to your goal may need tweaking on occasion. But that's okay, because you're going to be a panther and you're going to be ready to be nimble. T is for teamwork and talking. Right now, that means talking on Zoom or Teams or on the phone. But sooner rather than later, I promise you that talking will be face to face, albeit maybe at a slight distance. And it will be teamwork. Everything you're doing is still teamwork, and it's a different way of working with your team. But if you do keep talking, I promise you that creating change will be much easier. Everybody will be on board with your vision, with your goal, and they'll be ready to make the change. H, ask for help, advice, and consequently develop new behaviours. There's no point at the moment working in isolation. I think we're all on our own under lockdown, and I think that it is leading many of us to feel like we're working in isolation. I'm working from my parents' caravan right now, which is quite a surprise to me, but both brilliantly and scarily, I suppose. And I have reached out, I've been working with coaches. I've been working with people to help me feel positive, to help me focus on developing my own change management plan. So don't be working on your own. Ask for help, ask for advice, and then think about how you need to develop behaviours to implement those things. Evaluate and review all your plans on a regular basis. You'll find moments of feeling like everything's going really flipping well. And then you'll realise overnight that, getting to the vision is going to be that bit harder because maybe some finance didn't come through. It is going to happen, but just be ready. You can't predict certain things, but you can be ready to re-engage your plans in order to help you get back to that vision. And find ways to reward. And in this scenario, of course, I'm talking about your team. So if you're leading a team, if you're leading an organization, of course, it's about rewarding those around you. And it doesn't have to be financial reward. If people are on board with your overarching vision, rewards can be found in lots of different ways. But it's also about rewarding yourself and being kind to yourself. So a great day can be rewarded with a great glass of wine, or it could be rewarded with more time, an afternoon off, and more time with your family. Whatever is your way to reward others and yourselves, just include it in your plan, because it will be crucial for people to find the energy and the emotion to keep going on the journey with you. And I think what I really want you to remember from today, I want you to think about your spirit animal. I want you to be a panther. Thank you very much, everybody. I'm going to just show you the last page, which I know we're going to share this presentation, but it just gives you some of the references as well, which you may find useful. Sebastian, I'll let you take over.
Thank you so much, Dawn. That was amazing. I loved your energy and your positivity. Change is hard for everyone, particularly everything we're going through now, but it was great just to, maybe just look at things from a slightly different point of view, and positive thinking is definitely one of the areas that I think we need to commit a little bit of time to. We've got a couple of minutes for questions. So as people start thinking about the questions they might like to ask, I just have a couple of reflections. I think a few things that stood out for me, Dawn, the sort of that idea of the emotional journey, and everything from the sort of negative stuff, facing your fears, all the way through to positive thinking that I just mentioned. You talked about trying to sort of make things a bit more manageable, because it can be so overwhelming. You were talking about how do we eat an elephant, and that idea of actually just starting to break things down a bit makes it a bit more, a bit more manageable. Once we start breaking these things down, we can sort of pick them off one by one and start dealing with them. The idea of resource and resourcefulness I thought was really interesting, because it can be everything from, as you said, it's the people that we have, as well as our own sort of personal resource. And also the idea of what nowadays is a long-term vision. You know, you talked about, is it 8 weeks? Is it a 5-year strategic plan? It's hard at the minute, isn't it? Because there's so much uncertainty, and the rules keep on changing, and government legislation keeps on changing, and there's so many sort of what ifs. Mm-hmm. So the idea of what is long term, and just how do we make sure that we sort of own that, and that we can manage that again to make it a bit more manageable. And the last thing I thought was just really nice, that idea of a reward. That actually it is really hard for everyone at the minute, whether you're working or furloughed or something in between. So that idea of being kind to ourselves, and no matter what we're going through or what we're planning, making sure that yeah, there are moments when we just do something which is good for ourselves, because it is hard. And if at the very least, if we're giving ourselves a pat on the back, then that feels like a good thing. Okay, so let's just have a look at some of our questions. One we had, which was sent through before actually, was something I'm sure a lot of people are thinking about or worried about, which was how can you keep your team inspired and positive when there is a fear of redundancy? Because there's obviously so many what ifs at the minute, like I mentioned, and fear of redundancy is real. I think a lot of people are worried about that. So is there anything that sort of stands out for you, Dawn, that yeah, anything that particularly you think could really help keep people inspired and positive and motivated when there is a lot of negativity? Maybe there's something from the talk that actually sort of stands out for you that this could perhaps help with.
Yeah, I think that's a really great question, and actually I sort of need to answer it in 2 parts, because experience tells me that as a leader, you can spend a lot of time trying to inspire and make your team happy, sort of day in and day out, almost like the jester, you know, coming in and being, I'm really happy, be happy everybody, come on, can't you feel my happy energy? And my advice to you is to actually not take that path, but to actually be really honest and open with people, because it's as hard for leaders right now as it is for those that are in your team. So be kind to one another. And I also just think that a positive mental attitude within a team is a really great place to start. And not everybody will want to share 3 ways they feel positive. But we, at Boom, we used to, at the end of each week, we tried lots of different things, but sometimes we would share 3 things that we just nailed that week, you know? And actually it might have been just turning up on time because of public transport, or feeling motivated, you know, whilst working on your own for the day. But I would move the conversation away from the daily fear of redundancy and move it into what feels good today, what can you achieve today, and don't, as a leader, try and be the jester there to perform and make people happy all day.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Another question here, again, it's something I think might resonate with a lot of people. Someone who said they're planning on leaving their current employment around sort of August, September, so sort of just after the summer. And really they're seeing change management from the point of view of their job, you know, so how they can sort of broaden their job search. In this case, they're talking about their skills and attributes as a producer. But I suppose it's maybe we broaden it out and sort of go, when we're talking about change management in terms of career, is there anything that you think would be useful for people to keep in mind when they're looking at it from that point of view? Because it is obviously directly relating to the sector and their job and their future employment, but also it's such a personal thing, particularly if you've been doing something for a while. Any sort of thoughts on that, the sort of change management relating to jobs and work?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I would say is if you are working in this industry, you already nailed it. It is so competitive, so difficult to get a job that you are paid for, that on that basis, I truly believe that getting a job anywhere else is going to be so much easier, guys. I really do. So firstly, I would think about, you know, I would literally create my dream and think about, so what is that role? Because I think if you're just saying, oh, I just think I need to get out of what I'm doing now, it's not going to work for writing down your strategy. So really think about where you want to get to in 5 years, and then start working back from there. And go back to that, how do you eat an elephant? Well, in little pieces, guys. So, thinking about taking those steps towards your dream role.
Yeah, thank you. Here's quite a good one. Again, I mean, these are all great questions. Someone's asked on the Q&A, so just if you're not sure, the Q&A is at the bottom of your screen. Just hover over the bottom of the screen and you can just ask questions through Q&A there. There's a question here about the fact that someone's been through a huge period of change already, and the challenge they're facing is that there are some colleagues who still have not embraced change, and the phrase they use is they're potential well poisoners in the future. I think this is something that relates to any sort of change management, isn't it? It's that thing of no matter how positive you've been and how much communication you've given, gradually people are going to come on side, but there are always going to be people who maybe take longer to get to that point. Is there any thoughts you have on how we could help sort of manage that sort of situation where there's certain people who are maybe resisting the change? It may be that there's someone in their team, their manager, who's talking to them about it, and they are sort of in denial, perhaps, even though we're faced by this sort of huge tsunami of change around the world. Yeah. Sometimes it just comes down to the reality of one person, their life, their job, and they're sort of fighting it. Is there any thoughts you've got on how that could be addressed?
Oh, yeah. And gosh, it's such a great question, and I absolutely relate to it. My advice is, one, don't be confrontational about it. The fact that you recognize it, I'm sure the whole team does. So it does need dealing with. And the way I would begin is by having one-to-ones. And I would ask lots of open questions. And when I talk about open questions, ones that start with, tell me what you think I need to know. Tell me what I'm missing. Tell me why you think I'm making the wrong decisions. How do you feel today? I noticed this behavior. Talk to me about that. So that you're really starting to they have to talk. They have to actually start to articulate their problem with the situation. And it may well be as easy as, well, I just think you made the wrong decision there, and and I think I could have done it better. Genuinely, people will sometimes just think they could have done it better than you, despite all of your efforts. And as the person leading that change, sometimes you just have to take a deep breath and acknowledge the sharing of information and continue to work with them on a daily basis. I have to say, talk about emotional strain. It's really exhausting, and I know that. And eventually, what I have found in the past is it means that person is probably not happy, and they will eventually decide that they don't want to be part of an organization with you. And that's okay. It's okay then to let those people make a choice to go.
Yeah. And it's the motivation sometimes as well, isn't it? It's sort of trying to find what is it in that person that is demotivating, or what will motivate them to find the reason for change.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at time. We're nearly out, so I'm just going to do a quick. We have some really great questions here. Just a quickie, really. So someone's saying, you mentioned staying nimble in the P.A.N.T.H.E.R model that you've given, which seems crucial to survive. So any tips for being nimble using that P.A.N.T.H.E.R model?
Yeah, so I would say being nimble is about the ability to make a quick decision. So sometimes your instinctive response is the right one, so go with it. And you'll find that there are other times when you absolutely have to give great breadth and thought, but making a quick decision, going into work the next day, talking to your team, and then making change from there can sometimes be as good as spending 3 months talking about a piece of change that you only then start to make in month 4.
Great. Dawn, thank you so much for your time. It's been a really fantastic presentation, and just going by some of the questions, there's a lot more we could be talking about, but unfortunately we are out of time. So I just want to say, yeah, huge thank you, Dawn. Really appreciate all the time you've put into this. You can get hold of Dawn through her website, dawnfarrow.com, or via Dawn Farrow's LinkedIn profile. I just want to say thank you so much to everyone who's attended this. Just a reminder that this webinar will be circulated to everyone who's attended, and it will be on the theatremeansbusiness.info archive pages. There's a lot of other webinars we've got coming up. Thursday, 7th of May, we've got TRG Arts presenting Leadership for Recovery. Unfortunately, it is fully booked, so you need to start getting in there early with booking some of these courses. As you can see on the slide, we've also got Monday, 11th of May, so next Monday, one about mental resilience. And then also on Wednesday the 13th, we've got Planning Your Arts Business Journey. So lots more as well throughout May and June. So just to say, do check them out. We look forward to seeing you on some more of those. And thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Dawn. Thank you to everyone who joined.